Today we're going to talk about how to create an extraordinary leadership culture and buy-in to help make sure that the vision you have, the mission where you're trying to go towards, is going to help propel to get you to that next destination where you're seeking. We want to make sure that despite how challenging and how intelligent and how creative that your leadership team is that they're going to actually buy in to what you're doing. So we have 4 minutes to go through these key aspects, and these are some techniques that I use regularly in facilitations and working with extraordinary leadership teams. So number one, as a CEO, it's your job to show up and be prepared. People aren't going to follow you if you don't have your stuff together, and we want to make sure that you are walking your talk consistently. When you do that, people will tend to follow. But if you're being inconsistent and your message and words are different than your actions, they're not going to follow through with what you're talking about on a consistent basis. So make sure there is that consistency. After you create that clear vision, that clear strategy, you write it down, you enable your team to help respond to it. But then the next part's really important, is then you have to stop and start listening. See, when I do a strategic facilitation, I want to make sure that they understand the process and they understand how everything is going to actually get done. But then there's a really important point along the way that I'm making sure that they're staying engaged. And how you do that is by asking questions. You want to set up questions that's going to get your team inspired and get them to be thinking. There should be a combination of questions that are true and false, or perhaps they're guessing on a particular statistic that you're looking for. You want to help make sure they get engaged. But secondly, behind that is you want to ask them some why questions. Why do they think that is true? Why should it perhaps go in a different way? See, leaders want to be heard. And when you bring in great leadership and team members, if you're talking the entire time, they're going to get bored. They're going to check out. They're going to be thinking about it from their own perspective. It's like, oh, this leader just came in. They don't care about what I have to say. So after you've set that initial part where you got them engaged in the process of what you're going to do, then you actually have to move forward with the next step, which is actually moving forward to get new insights. So when you go through this new insight process, set the key guidelines. Say, for example, we're trying to get to this certain destination. We're trying to double in revenue next year. Then you want to break out your teams into diverse groups, I recommend, and get them to put together and give them time to think through their answers. And after you give them time to think through their answers, then you're going to actually have them present on the concepts so they feel like they start to own it. Now, one of the big challenges that people do in strategic facilitations is they get this impression that every idea is a good idea, and it's not necessarily true. The reality is that there's a lot of ideas, but not necessarily every idea is going to bring you forward. So then you get the team together to actually vote on the concepts and key areas that they came up with. And then after you go through that voting process, then they'll recognize, hey, these are the best ideas that we think is going to make the biggest impact on the difference. By taking that philosophy, it's going to help create that buy-in for you to have an extraordinary strategic culture to make sure that your organization is much more likely to reach the destination that you intended.